Hi everyone, welcome back to Virginia Social Studies. This is Unit 1, Lesson 2. And if you have this following textbook, you're more than welcome to follow along with us. So the essential questions of this chapter are: what are some important categories of geographic features? What do these important geographic features look like when they appear on maps, globes, and diagrams? And what do these important geographic features look like when they appear in pictures and photographs? So, when mapping the Earth's features, what is often shown on maps are water-related features, land-related features. These are the two physical features usually on maps. And then features that are caused by us are referred to as human-related features. So water-related features are rivers, streams, and oceans. Land-related features are mountains, hills, and valleys. And human-related features are roads, bridges, and buildings. So when we look at maps and we want to recognize water-related features, they're often shown in blue on maps. And one term for a water-related feature that you should know is tributary. A tributary is a water-related feature, and it basically refers to a particular river that flows into a larger river. Other water-related features are oceans, gulfs, bays, lakes, rivers, and their tributaries. So you can see this map of some of the major rivers in the United States. Notice how they're in blue. And you can see some lighter blue sort of all around this map, and they're smaller rivers. Those lighter blue indications there are, you can call them tributaries, because they flow into the much larger rivers of the Colorado, Missouri, Rio Grande, Mississippi, etc. So now, recognizing land-related features. These are usually shown by shades of green or brown. Green features are usually grasses or trees. You can think of them as areas where there's a lot of water and plants. Because plants are green, map makers tend to just say, okay, plants are green, so we're going to make these areas green. Brown features are usually deserts or other dry areas. And you can think of it just as, you look at a desert, it looks brown. So map makers are generally like, okay, this will make sense to the most people. Finally, some of the important land features you have to know are plain, plateau, or plateau, and peninsula. A plain refers to an area of mostly flat land. A plateau refers to an area of high flat land. So this is land that is sort of higher from the ground. It's it's not on the ground, but it's maybe on a something elevated, or like a tabletop, or you can think of your TV stand as a plateau, and you can think of the plain as your carpet. Plateaus are elevated. And if you lived in the West for any amount of time, you might have heard the term mesa. A mesa is also a plateau. It is an elevated piece of high flat land. It's kind of like a tabletop jutting out from the actual land. And finally, a peninsula is a piece of land bordered by water on three sides. So if any of you have lived into Florida, then you've lived on a peninsula. Florida is a piece of land that is bordered by water on three sides. And so again, you can see Florida in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can see that it's bordered by the Atlantic Ocean on its right and the Gulf of Mexico on its left. So it's sort of bordered on three sides. Also, other land features are sometimes seen on maps, other land features that are often seen in maps are black triangles, and they refer to mountains, or red and black lines, and they refer to borders. And finally, some maps are made by satellites or airplanes. And what these satellites often do is they go around the Earth taking pictures after pictures after pictures, both really high resolution and not as high resolution from different distances from the ground. And they help you see, The military uses them, but we also use them. They help you see, where things are, where buildings are, what's going to happen. In fact, in history, satellites and airplanes are really important when it comes to the Russia and communism and things we'll learn about in 7th grade, or things that your parents might know a little bit about if you ask them. So this is how geographers show elevation. And elevation refers to the height of the land above sea level. So, for example, the Shenandoah Mountains in the west, or the Blue Ridge Mountains in the west, or if you just simply go west from Woodbridge for a little bit, you will find that the elevation gets higher and higher and higher. And that means that the location you are at as you go further and further west is much sort of higher than where the Atlantic Ocean is, or where the sea level is, or where the nearest major body of water is. And how this works in America is as you go west, you hit a mountain range, and your elevation is really high. Then it flattens out into a plains, and then what ends up happening again is you hit the Rocky Mountains, which is really tall, really off the ground, off the sea level. And then it flattens out again as you get to the Pacific Ocean. And again, you can think of elevation almost as a degree of being tall, or a degree of being high up, or even if you're rock climbing, the rock cliff at the end is usually where it has a higher elevation than where you start out from. Now, relief is shown on a map as differences in elevation. So it tries to look at the difference between sort of being on the bottom of a cliff and the top of a cliff, and it tries to indicate that difference in some way. And these are useful for finding out which way a river flows. So rivers always go from higher to lower elevations. So this is a map of Florida that is an elevation map, and you can see that sort of in the north there, by the northern part of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina, there's a much higher elevation than when you go south to the southern tip of Florida. An elevation diagram is sort of like a cross-section taken of the Earth that shows elevation in greater detail than the elevation map that you just seen. So it's like you're taking a particular area, like the area around Potomac Middle School, and you're trying to look at elevation in much greater detail. And as I said before, the United States elevation, if you were to draw a elevation diagram, is low in the Atlantic Ocean. Then as you go west, you hit a mountain range called the Blue Ridge or Appalachian Mountains, and they're much higher. When you go past that, it gets lower. We're in the middle of the country now. And then when you go past that, it hits the Rocky Mountains, much higher. And then when you go past that, we hit California, and it's much lower. And this is an example of an elevation diagram. Notice that it's like a cross-section of a particular place or area. So take a moment, pause this video, and just think about this question and maybe answer it. Why do you think maps are important, or learning about maps are important? And remember, take what I talked about in the first video about the difference between, you going to Potomac Mills for the first time and not knowing where things are. Now just imagine you are in America for the first time and you don't know where things are. And you have to figure out sort of where to find the things you need to live. Where do you find the land that you need to live? Also, you can use these questions as a guide to see if you remember everything that we just talked about so far in this section. What are the two main categories of physical features shown on the map? What color is used to show water-related features? How does a plateau differ from a plain? You can also write a short summary of everything you have learned without rewatching this video to sort of test yourself or quiz yourself about what you remember. And finally, what are some colors used to show land-related features?